The baby is gone. We're sorry. There's nothing else we can do. All 21 doctors bowed their heads in shame. All their years of experience, degrees, and knowledge couldn't save the baby lying still on the bed. Andrew Jackson, the billionaire who owned cities, fell to his knees. Money meant nothing to him now. Power meant nothing. His only son, Peter, the heir to his billion-dollar Dallas real estate empire, was no longer breathing. Then a sound cut through the silence, a small voice, clear, brave, and confident. "He's alive! I can wake him!" Everyone turned. A poor, homeless boy stepped forward, a boy no one recognized, a boy who was never meant to be there. The doctors froze. The guards moved. The room held its breath. Because in that moment, the future of an empire rested in the hands of a poor boy who should not have existed. Before we start, I just want to know, where are you watching from today? This channel feels like family, and I love knowing where everyone is tuning in from. If you enjoy heartfelt stories like this, don't forget to like and subscribe. Let's stay connected. They said Andrew Jackson owned the city of Dallas long before he owned the skyline. When his name was spoken, voices became lower. When his black cars drove past, people stopped talking, not because he asked them to, but because everyone already knew. Andrew Jackson was a billionaire. Not the smiling kind, not the friendly kind. He was the kind of man who woke before the sun and expected the world to be already working. People said he did not raise his voice. He never had to. One look from him could make grown men stand still. Andrew built his fortune with stone, steel, and silence. Luxury buildings, expensive cars, tall towers that touched the clouds. But inside his heart, there was only one hunger: an heir. He married once. It ended quietly. He married again. More beauty, more money. Still, no child. When the second marriage ended, Andrew stopped smiling at all. To him, love meant nothing without legacy. And so he built a mansion that looked more like a guarded city than a home. Tall gates, cold walls, perfect floors. Every worker knew the rules. No noise, no wandering, no questions. You stood where you were told, you moved only when asked. Cameras watched every corner, every hall, every door. Even the walls felt like they were listening. Inside Andrew Jackson's house, silence was not peace, it was protection. Mistakes don't get corrected, they got erased. A maid once dropped a glass, it shattered loudly. The next day, her name was no longer on the schedule. Still, people lined up to work there because the pay was high. Andrew believed control made life perfect, and for a long time, it did. Then one day, everything changed. A third woman entered his life. She was calm, quiet, different. Months passed, then a sound echoed through the mansion that had never been heard before. A baby's cry. Andrew Jackson finally had a son. The world celebrated. News spread fast. The heir had arrived. Inside the mansion, rules became even tighter. More guards, more cameras, more silence. The baby was precious, untouchable. Andrew watched his son sleep like a king watching gold. Nothing was too expensive. Nothing was too much. The child would never know hunger, never know fear. Andrew promised himself that. But while the world focused on the baby's crib, no one noticed something else. Something small, something hidden. Because inside that great mansion, behind the shining floors, behind the locked doors, someone else was breathing quietly. Someone who learned early how to stay still. Someone who learned how to watch without being seen. Someone who did not belong there. Inside Andrew Jackson's mansion, Nannies and maids are waiting at every corner. One of them was Rachel. She woke up before the sun, every day. Not because she wanted to, but because she had to. Her body felt tired even before she stood up. Her hands were rough, her eyes were heavy. Rachel was only 23, but life had made her feel much older. She had no parents, no home of her own, no place to return to when the day ended. The mansion was her world now. She cleaned the floors until they shined like glass. She washed clothes that cost more than her whole life. She scrubbed toilets she was never allowed to speak near. She knew the rules. Do your work, do not speak, do not be seen. But Rachel carried a secret heavier than the buckets she lifted each day. His name was Maxwell, Rachel's only brother. Maxwell was 13, small for his age, quiet, sharp-eyed. He noticed things most people missed. He could hear a guard coming from far away. He could tell which camera moved and which one did not. He remembered patterns, sounds, and steps. Maxwell was brilliant, but he was also afraid, very afraid, because Maxwell was not meant to be there. When their parents passed away, the streets became their home. Cold nights, empty days. Rachel tried to work anywhere she could, but she could not leave her brother alone, not in the streets, not in the dark. So when she got the job at Andrew Jackson's mansion, she made a choice, a risky choice. She brought her brother, Maxwell, with her. Not through the front gate, she hid him. Behind the mansion, there was a small guest house. Quiet, old, rarely used. That became Maxwell's world. He stayed inside all day. He never stepped outside, never made a sound, never opened the door unless Rachel was there. When Rachel worked, Maxwell stayed still. When Rachel slept, Maxwell stayed awake. He ate only when she brought food. He spoke only in whispers. To the world, Maxwell did not exist. Rachel told him the rule many times. "If anyone sees you," she said softly, "we lose everything." She did not need to explain more. They both knew what everything meant. So Maxwell learned how to hide. But hiding did not stop his eyes from working. There was one small window in the guest house. From there, Maxwell could see part of the mansion, the bright halls, the shiny floors, the people moving like shadows. He watched the rich world from behind glass. He saw how the guards walked, how maids moved fast and quietly. Maxwell listened. He learned. He noticed things others ignored. And slowly, without knowing it, Maxwell became part of the mansion, not as a worker, not as a guest, but as a watcher. Rachel did not know how much he saw. She thought he was only hiding, only surviving. But Maxwell's mind was always awake, always learning, always watching. And deep inside the great mansion, behind the rules, behind the cameras, behind the silence, a boy who was never meant to be there was already seeing everything. Unlike other babies in the city of Dallas, the billionaire's son grew so fast, stubborn, and throws tantrums at anyone who tries to stop him. The nannies watched him every second. His food was warm, clean, always ready. Nothing was left to chance, nothing was delayed. The baby's name was Peter, and from the moment he arrived, the mansion no longer felt like a house. It felt like a kingdom protecting its crown. The love for the boy made his father, Andrew, careful, and careful made him strict, very strict. New rules were written. No shouting, no sudden moves. No one was allowed to touch the baby. Peter was free, free to crawl, free to pull things, break glasses, shatter TV screens. If the baby cried, everyone froze. If he laughed, the house felt light. Nannies watched him closely. Guards stood alert. Doctors stayed nearby. But no one stopped him. The baby learned early that the world moved for him. Maxwell watched all of this from the glass. He watched the baby crawl on soft floors. He watched toys pile up like hills. He watched people rush with fear and care. Maxwell stepped back from the window. He understood something new. The baby was not just loved, he was protected by power. Days passed. Peter grew faster, more stubborn and untouchable. The mansion followed his moves. Nothing stayed on the floor too long. Nothing stayed loose. But not everything could be seen. Then one quiet morning, the nanny was busy. She stood by the table, mixing the baby's food. The baby crawled alone for a moment. Maxwell leaned closer to the glass. On the floor, near the baby's hand, was something very small. So small most eyes would miss it, but Maxwell saw it. A small grain of corn. It rested near the baby's hand, almost hiding in the shine of the floor. Maxwell's heart skipped. He leaned closer to the glass. The grain did not move. The baby did. Peter crawled closer. His hand reached out for the grain of corn. Maxwell's hands pressed against the glass. He wanted to knock, to wave at the nanny to check on the little boy, but he did not. Because if anyone sees him, his sister Rachel will lose her job or be punished. The little boy Peter picked the grain and lifted it closer. Maxwell shook his head slowly. "No, please, put it down," he whispered. But the words stayed with him. The baby's hand moved up to his face. Gentle, slow. Maxwell watched from the glass. His heart beat fast. The grain of corn touched the baby's nose. Then it slipped inside. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the baby's body changed. His smile faded. His small hands stopped moving. The grain went inside and blocked his nose. The baby's eyes widened. The room felt cold. He made a small sound. Not a cry, not a laugh, just a soft sound. His body grew still, too still. His breathing slowed, then stopped. The baby's skin lost its warm color. Maxwell's hands shook. "Please, somebody help. The baby is dying," he whispered. That was when the nanny came out of the kitchen. She saw the little boy, Peter, lying still on the floor. Her bowl of custard and milk fell to the floor. She rushed to the baby. She picked him up fast, called his name again and again. But Peter did not move. Guards rushed in. Doctors were called. Andrew Jackson appeared in the doorway. His face changed when he saw his son. The room was filled with people. Machines rolled in. Hands moved fast. Maxwell stood frozen, watching. He knew what had happened. He had seen it. The small grain of corn, and the moment it slipped into the baby's nose. Rules filled Maxwell's mind. Do not be seen. Do not speak. Do not exist. If he moved, they would see him, and that would be the end for him and his sister Rachel. Maxwell thought of his sister, her tired hands, her quiet voice, her promise to protect him. Tears filled his eyes. He wanted to shout and save the baby, but his feet would not move. Fear held him tight. The doctors worked fast. They checked the baby. They looked at screens. They spoke in low voices. Andrew stood close. His hands shook. Money did not matter now. Maxwell felt heavy inside. If he spoke, everything would change. If he stayed silent, the worst would happen. The mansion did not feel rich anymore. The heir to the billion-dollar real estate empire was laying still on a soft bed. The room was full of careful hands. Doctors arrived one by one. Some came from overseas. Some spoke with calm voices, some spoke very fast. They checked the baby again and again. They looked at screens. They shook their heads slowly. More doctors were called. A doctor from India came, then one from China, then one from Japan. Each one looked, each one tried, each one confused. The billionaire stood near the bed. The man who owned towers, the man who owned roads, the man who owned time. Now he owned nothing. His hands shook. His eyes stayed on his son. "Please, make him wake up. I will pay anything, any amount," he said softly. Doctors spoke to him in low voices. They explained things gently. They tried to give hope, but their faces showed worry. Andrew sat down. His shoulders fell. He covered his face with his hands. For the first time, the man who ruled everything felt very small. Tears ran down his face. No one spoke. The room stayed quiet. Money could not help. Power could not help. Only time moved. Maxwell watched from the glass. He pressed his hands together. More time passed. Doctors tried again and again. Machines beeped. Andrew stood up. He walked to the window. He looked out at his gardens. All that beauty, all that space, none of it mattered. He turned back to the doctors. "Do something, please. He's my only child. I can't lose him like that," he said. His voice was not strong. It was soft. The doctors nodded. They tried again. They checked again. Still nothing. Maxwell felt his chest hurt. He wanted to speak. His mouth opened. Then he saw the cameras, small red lights, watching, waiting. He saw the guards by the door, standing tall. Maxwell closed his mouth. He stayed still. The doctors stepped back. They looked at each other. Their eyes said the same thing. Andrew saw it. "No way! My son will not die! He must live!" he cried. He stepped closer to the bed. He held his tiny hand. "Please, do something," he said again. The room felt heavy. Maxwell's eyes filled with tears. He knew the baby was still there. He knew it, but time was running out. Doctors stood close together. They looked at screens. They pointed softly. Lines moved on the screens. Colors changed. Numbers blinked. But nothing gave answers. One doctor spoke in a low voice. Another crossed his arms and shook his head. They did not agree. They checked again and again. The machine stayed quiet. The baby stayed still. Andrew watched their faces. He searched for hope, even a small sign, but their eyes did not lift. They leaned close to each other. They spoke in whispers, soft words, heavy words. Maxwell heard them. He pressed closer to the glass. His heart beat fast. The doctors pointed at the screen. They shook their heads again. One word slipped out. A word Maxwell did not want to hear. His body felt weak. His knees bent. He sat on the floor, quiet and small. His hands shook. He covered his mouth. No sound came out. Maxwell cried without noise. Tears rolled down his face. He knew the truth. He had always known. This was not a mystery. This was not magic. It was small. It was simple, and he had seen it. But now his voice felt locked away. He looked at the cameras. Red lights blinked. Watching. His sister, Rachel, walked past the guest house. She stopped. She looked inside. Maxwell was on the floor, crying. Rachel's heart jumped. She rushed in quietly. "Maxwell, what's going on? Are you okay?" she whispered. He looked up. His eyes were full of fear. "I know the truth. The baby. I saw it," he said to his sister. Rachel did not understand. "What do you know?" she asked. Maxwell shook his head. He could not say it. If he said it, everything would change. Rachel held his face. "You're shaking," she said softly. He pointed toward the mansion, toward the room, toward the baby. Rachel felt it too. Something was wrong. Very wrong. Inside the room, the doctors stepped back. They stood in a line. Their shoulders were heavy. Andrew saw them move. His chest tightened. He stepped forward. "Doctor, my son will make it, right?" he asked. His voice was low, too low. The doctors looked at each other. One of them spoke, slowly, carefully. Maxwell pressed his hands to his ears. He did not want to hear. Rachel pulled him close. She felt his tears soak her shirt. The doctor finished speaking. The room went still. No machine spoke. No one moved. The billionaire, Andrew, did not breathe. The word hung in the air. It felt bigger than the room, bigger than the mansion. Maxwell's heart felt like it would break. He opened his eyes. He knew time was almost gone. He knew silence was hurting everyone. And then, the word was said out loud. "There's nothing more we can do." The words hung in the air, heavy, impossible. The kind of words that make your chest tighten. Andrew Jackson froze. He felt his legs grow weak. The man who had never lost anything, the man who had always controlled everything. He collapsed under the chair beside the baby's bed. His hands trembled. His face hid in them. The nurses and the other doctors stared at the baby. The room was quiet. No one dared to move. Maxwell pressed his hands against the glass. He could feel the heat of the baby's tiny body through the window. He could feel the fear in the mansion. He could feel the world's weight on his small shoulders. His heart beat fast. His mind raced. He knew the truth. The small grain of corn, the tiny mistake. The baby was not yet gone, not really. He wanted to run into the room. He wanted to grab the baby and fix everything. But he could not. Cameras blinked red. Guards watched the doors. Rules filled his head. If he moved, everything would fall apart. If he spoke, everything could be lost. Maxwell's eyes filled with tears. He clenched his fists. He whispered to himself, "I must save the little boy, even if it costs us everything." Then, somehow, the words escaped. A small, trembling voice echoed through the room. "Wait, he's alive!" The doctor stopped. The nurses froze. Even Andrew lifted his head. All eyes turned to the door. Maxwell stepped forward, tiny and brave, standing at the edge of the room. His chest rose and fell quickly. His small voice sounded again, stronger now. "He's alive! I can make him breathe again!" A hush fell over everyone. The air felt heavy. Time seemed to slow. The guards shifted uneasily. Their hands twitched toward their belts. The rules were clear. No one could enter that room. No one could speak without permission. And yet, here was a boy who shouldn't have been seen, a boy who shouldn't exist in this mansion, standing tall in the middle of the chaos. Andrew's eyes widened. He studied the boy carefully. He saw the fear, yes, but also the courage shining in his eyes. Something about Maxwell made the billionaire's chest tighten. The doctors whispered among themselves. Machines beeped softly. The baby lay still, unaware of the tension surrounding him. Maxwell took a deep breath. He knew he had to act fast. The guards stopped in their tracks. All eyes turned toward the boy. Maxwell. Small, fragile, invisible for so long. And yet, here he was, standing in the middle of the richest room in the city of Dallas, where power had always ruled, where silence had always been law. Everyone stared. Whispers filled the room. Who is this child? Where did he come from? How dare he speak? Even the doctors froze. Even the machines seemed to hold their beeps. The billionaire, Andrew Jackson, stepped forward. His eyes narrowed. His hands tightened into fists. The man who owned towers, roads, and every luxury couldn't believe what he was seeing. A child, speaking, commanding attention. The guards moved closer, ready to drag him away. "Stop!" Andrew's voice boomed, but it was not clear if he was angry or unsure. Maxwell lifted his chin. He did not flinch, he did not step back. He looked straight at Andrew, straight into the eyes of the man who never let anyone bend him. "Sir, I can save your son if you allow me," Maxwell said, voice small but steady. The room went completely quiet. Andrew's face turned sharp. He could have sent the guards to pick him up and throw him away, but something held him back. Maxwell's eyes were clear, focused, calm, brave. Andrew noticed something he had never seen in any worker: determination. He saw that the boy was not afraid of the cameras. He was not afraid of the guards. He was not afraid of him. The room felt smaller. The air felt heavier. Even the machine's soft beeps waited for what would happen next. Maxwell stepped forward another inch. "Please," he said softly. "I can make him breathe again. I can wake him up." Andrew swallowed. His chest rose and fell fast. Everything he had built, everything he had ruled, every rule he had ever made, now felt smaller than the small boy standing before him. He looked at the baby, pale, still, fragile. He looked at the doctors. They had no answers. None. And then he looked back at Maxwell, the boy who shouldn't exist, the boy who had no right to speak in this house. And Andrew Jackson made a choice that went against every rule he had ever set, a choice that risked everything he had built, a choice that no one expected. Maxwell stepped close to the baby. His small hands were steady, his eyes focused, his mind calm. He reached for the first aid box on the nearby table. Inside, he found the tool he needed, a small scissors. The air grew heavier. Doctors whispered. Guards moved slightly forward. Even Andrew Jackson's chest tightened. Maxwell's fingers shook slightly, but his hands remained steady. The scissors moved just enough to reach the tiny problem. Every second felt like an hour. The mansion itself seemed to hold its breath. The baby's tiny nose glimmered in the soft light. Every eye in the room was fixed on Maxwell. His small hands were doing the impossible, something no one had dared try, something no one had believed could be done. He leaned closer, keeping the scissors steady, careful not to hurt the baby, careful not to make a sound, careful not to break the fragile moment. And then, something small moved, something invisible to everyone else, but Maxwell saw it. He reached the grain. His fingers curled. The scissors held it gently. The tiny object rolled gently on the floor. A single grain of corn. It seemed so small, so unimportant, yet in that moment, it held the weight of the whole mansion. Maxwell's hands trembled as he watched it fall. He took a deep breath. He stepped back, slowly. The baby's tiny body shivered. A soft gasp escaped his lips. His chest moved. The color began to return to his pale cheeks. Slowly, carefully, like the sun rising after a long, dark night. The room stayed still, but the air felt lighter. The heavy tension seemed to lift. Then a sound broke the silence, a small, fragile cry. The baby's little voice filled the room, louder now, stronger, alive. The doctors froze, their mouths opened. They could not believe their eyes. Machines beeped softly, confirming what everyone hoped but never thought possible. Andrew Jackson leaned forward. His hands shook. Tears ran freely down his face. For the first time in his life, the richest man in Dallas could not hide his emotions. He looked at Maxwell, the small boy, the boy who had been invisible. His eyes were wide,
His mouth opened. He could not find words. The nurses rushed in. They smiled. They laughed softly. They touched the baby gently. The baby boy wiggled. He kicked. He looked around, his eyes bright and clear. The impossible had happened. Maxwell stood still, watching quietly, his chest heavy, his hands shaking, but a small smile appeared on his lips. He had done it. He had saved the heir. He had done what no one else could do, but now everyone had seen him. The cameras had recorded, the guards had watched, the doctors had witnessed. Maxwell had changed everything, and nothing would ever be the same again.
The baby slept peacefully in Andrew Jackson's arms. Soft breaths, tiny hands curled. Life returned. But all eyes were on Maxwell. He stood small and still, feeling every glance. Andrew's face was unreadable. His chest rose and fell slowly. Then he spoke. "Who is this boy?" he asked. His voice was low, calm, but carried authority. Maxwell's heart beat fast. He looked at his sister, Rachel, who was wearing her maid outfit. She stood beside him, exhausted but protective. Andrew stepped closer. "Tell me the truth," he said. "Why were you in my house? Why did you risk everything?" Rachel swallowed hard. Her hands shook. She glanced at Maxwell. She knew the moment had come. She took a deep breath, and she spoke. "We have no family," she said softly. "My brother, he had nowhere else to go. I brought him here in secret. We never wanted to cause trouble. We just wanted to survive." Maxwell nodded, grinning from ear to ear. Andrew Jackson studied them, every word, every expression. Even the nurses paused, unsure what would happen next. For a moment, everyone expected the worst: punishment, anger, fury. Andrew's eyes never left Maxwell. He seemed to weigh every detail, every risk, every choice the boy had made. Finally, he spoke, his voice steady, his eyes sharp. "You could have been punished," he said. Rachel's hands clenched. Maxwell felt his chest tighten. But Andrew continued. "You were brave. You acted when no one else could. You saved my only son." Andrew turned toward everyone in the room. His tone deepened, serious yet soft. "And now, you deserve a future that matches your courage." Rachel and Maxwell blinked. They were not expecting anything like this, not this mercy, not this attention. The billionaire continued. "I'm giving you a full scholarship, the best school, the best teachers. You will never have to hide again." Maxwell's chest tightened. He looked at Rachel. Her eyes were wide. Her mouth trembled. She could not believe it. "And your home," Andrew said, "will no longer be a small, hidden place. You and your sister will have a house of your own, comfortable, safe, protected." Rachel stepped closer. Her hands clutched Maxwell's arm. Tears ran down her face. She whispered softly, We can finally live without fear." Andrew turned to the staff. "Rachel," he said, "your work here has been remarkable. From today, your salary has been increased. This household is now in your care. You will no longer work long hours, and you will be protected in this mansion." The room shifted. No one expected such generosity. Maxwell felt something new in his chest: hope, confidence, a sense that the shadows he had lived in were gone. The mansion seemed to change around them. Rooms that had felt cold now seemed alive. Walls that had held fear now held warmth. Even the air felt lighter, filled with possibilities. Rachel smiled through her tears. This is more than I could ever dream," she said. Maxwell squeezed her hand. They shared a quiet look, a promise that they would never take this second chance for granted. Thanks for watching and staying with us. Let us know in the comments, what is one thing you learned from this story?